Hello students, hope all of you are doing well during this pandemic time. Take care of your good health. Well, this is Dr. M. Bhushanam, Associate Professor in Zoology, Maharani Science College for Women, Bengaluru. In today's session of genetics, we shall learn the concept of the phenotype, genotype, and phenocopy. The learning objectives includes the objective to understand the terms phenotype and genotype and to learn the concept of phenocopy. The contents of today's session includes the concepts of phenotype, genotype, and phenocopy. First, we shall learn the concept of phenotype. Students, the word phenotype generally refers to the external appearance of an organism. Technically to speak, it refers to the appearance of the characters of the organism due to the expression of a gene. The word phenotype is derived from two Greek words. Pheni refers to the meaning to appear, typos refers to the meaning image or representation. So, the word phenotype refers to the appearance of the external characters of the organisms due to the expression of a gene product within the body of an animal or an organism. The term phenotype is coined by William Johansen in 1911. Down in the picture, when you look at towards the extreme right, is the picture of Johansen, and towards the extreme left is the father of genetics, Father Gregor Mendel, between which is the flower which shows two different colors. So, the color of the two different flowers is influenced by the gene expression. The appearance externally, what it forms, is exactly refers to the phenotype. So, phenotype is the external or physical expression of the characters of an organism. It generally refers to the appearance of an organism from the genetic factors that influence it. So, gene will have the production of the product of proteins, and that proteins will in turn gives the expression of the external characters, which we call it as the phenotype. So, remember, the genic expression is under the control of the environment. It includes the biological appearances of biochemical, structural, and behavioral attributes like the morphological changes such as the form or size, sex, color, behavior, etc., and biochemical changes that it includes the ABO blood groups. So, when we look at the pictures down again, the characteristic appearance of the characters, the traits which are under the control of the genes, is exactly referring to the phenotype. So, these phenotypic characters are visible to the eyes. The phenotypic characters can be directly observed in an organism, and hence it is a measurable distinct characteristic of an individual. So, phenotype, since it is observable through our naked eyes, it is referred as measurable distinct characteristic of an animal. So, these phenotypic characters keeps changing in the organism during the course of development as the organism shows certain of changes during the development. The phenotypic characters will remain same with the genotype if it is recessive. Let us understand a concept here. Phenotype refers to the external appearance of the organism, and the genes that contributes for this external appearance are called as genotypes. So this genotypic representation, we call it as genotype, is based on the genic factors. You know that every gene is the functional unit of the DNA. This gene, when it becomes functional, it is represented in two alternative subunit forms, which are called as alleles or allelomorphs. Students, remember the two alleles that are present on two homologous chromosomes, when combines together at a same genic locus, locus refers to the position. So we have homologous chromosomes. On the homologous chromosomes, we have a position for the gene which we call it as locus, and the same locus, if a particular gene occupies with the alternative subunits, we call it as alleles. These alleles, if are represented in recessive condition. What is recessive condition? It's a condition wherein the genes will suppress themselves, their expression in presence of a dominant allele. So we have two alleles. If those two alleles are of dominant together, then the dominant expression of the character is seen. If one is dominant, the other one is recessive, then we call it as heterozygous condition. So dissimilar alleles are seen in this condition. Thereby, the character that gets expressed will be of the dominant allele. If both the alleles are recessive, then they express the phenotypic character which is recessive in nature. So remember, genes expresses a character. If this character expression is under the control of the functional genes, and these functional genes are represented on the homologous chromosomes at a particular locus by means of two subunits, two alternative forms. Each of this is called as an allele. So these two alleles can be either dominant or recessive, or both together it could be. If one is dominant, other one is recessive, only the dominant character gets expressed according to the Mendel. So this condition where one dominant allele, one recessive allele together, if it is expressed as a character of dominance, we call it as heterozygous condition. It is because of dissimilar alleles. If two alleles are of dominant condition are there, we call it as similar alleles of homozygous condition. If both are dominant, we call it as dominant homozygous condition. So dominant characters are expressed. If both are recessive, we call it as again homozygous condition. So recessive character of the gene gets expressed. So I think the concept is clear. To further understand it clearly, we have a classical example of the height of the pea plant, what Mendel has considered, namely tall plant and a dwarf plant. Tall plant is due to the genetic expression of the genotype capital T or capital T small t. Students, remember, if one capital T is there as the genotype allele, then the dominant character gets expressed. If both are capital T of the genotype tallness, we call it as homozygous dominant tall. If one is dominant, the other one is recessive, we call it as heterozygous dominant. Again, the character is tall because tall character, the dominant character is expressed. Whereas in dwarf condition, where we look at, it is due to the recessive allele small t. So the recessive genes for the character will have phenotype recessive, And genotype is also recessive in condition. That's what the first sentence of the slide expresses. Now, for dominant genes, we have either homozygous or heterozygous genotype. Now, the phenotypic expression is the tallness or the dwarfness. So, words are used to express the phenotypic characters. So, that's important here. When we look at here the characters of tallness and dwarfness, they expresses the phenotypic appearance. So, it is phenotypic trait. So, what is phenotypic condition? It's a phenotype refers to the external physical appearance of the organism. So, the characters which relates to the physical appearance are called phenotypic characters. They are usually expressed by using words like tall, dwarf, the color, etc. To cite an example again here, the phenotypic character is the tallness. In pea plant, it can be capital T for homozygous tallness, capital T small t for heterozygous tallness. For recessive, it is dwarf condition and it is due to the genotype small t. So, hope the concept is clear. What is phenotype? Phenotype is the external appearance of or physical appearance of the traits of an organism. It is under the control of the genes. Students, remember, these genes will have its expression based on the environment in which it gets exposed to. So, it is due to the presence of the type of alleles, and these alleles will determine the character that the organism or the plant here shows. The next concept for us to understand is the genotype. The word genotype refers to the genic constitution, that is the functional unit of the DNA which is responsible for the expression of a character which is represented on the chromosomes in the gene locus is called genotype. In simple, genotype refers to the total genetic constitution of the organism. So, genotype refers to the genic constitution of the organism. It is derived from two Greek words. Genos means race, typos means image or representation. So, the genetic constituent which is responsible for the expression of a phenotypic character is called a genotype. It is coined by William Johansen again in 1911. So, remember, the words phenotype and genotype was coined by Johansen in 1911. So, to understand the concept of genotype down, we know that the plant is tall. That is the phenotypic character. Tallness is the phenotypic character. So, what is responsible for this tallness? Down we have represented it as capital T, capital T. So, that capital T representation of the gene or the allelic form of the gene which is responsible for the expression of character is called genotype. So, representation of gene in simple terms to say. So, the genetic makeup or constitution of an individual which determines the characters is called as the genotype. Students, remember, the genotype is the complement of the genetic material or the genome that an organism inherits from its parents. So, genes or the functional DNA which expresses the character which are together called as the genotype when they are represented by using certain of the symbols. Generally, the genotype of an organism for a character remain constant during the development and even during the continuity of the life of an individual under the same environmental condition. Say supposing if an animal or an organism gets exposed to a newer environment, then there could be chances for the mutational changes to occur in the organism. So genotype, if it is exposed to the same environment, it will never change, it will remain constant for an animal or an organism, and it is not influenced by the phenotype. Remember, genotype is not influenced by phenotype, but phenotype is influenced by the genotype. These genotypes are expressed by using certain of the symbols. For example, for tallness, homozygous tallness, we make use of capital T, capital T. For heterozygous tallness, we make use of capital T, small t. For recessive dwarf plants, homozygous dwarf, we make use of small t, small t. So, the genetic representation by using certain of the symbols is the representation of the genotype overall. So, that's about the importance of the concept of genotype. Students, remember, the concept of phenotype is the external appearance of the organism. The concept of genotype represents the internal genetic makeup of the organism, which is responsible for the phenotypic characters. After we understanding these two important characters of phenotype and genotype concepts, now we shall understand the third important concept referred as phenocopy. So, the word phenocopy means, it refers to when two genotypes produce the same phenotype. Let us say two different genotypes are there, genotype A and genotype B. When two different genes, when they are exposed to different environments, these tend to produce the same phenotype. I again repeat, when two different genotypes starts producing the same phenotype due to the difference in the environmental condition, we call the condition as phenocopy, copying the phenotype. Okay, so we have originally the phenotype A. The other organism of a different genotype will copy the phenotype of the same organism as that of A. When B copies the characters of A into it, even though it has different genotype at a different environment, we call these two individuals as what? Phenocopies. Hope the concept is clear. So, when two different genotypes produce the same phenotype at different environmental condition, we call it as phenocopy. So, the term phenine refers to the external appearance. So, phenotypically they resemble same, externally they resemble same, internally genotypically they are totally different. Are you able to follow? Down is the picture of the Himalayan rabbit, which shows, which serves as the example for the phenocopy here. We shall understand it little later. So, phenocopies will have different genotypes, but when they are exposed to a different environment, they tend to possess the same phenotype in them. So, they are environmentally induced phenotypic characters. So, environment will influence both the organism to exhibit the same characters in them, even though they are genotypically different, genotypically variable. And this kind of characters which are imbibed by the organism due to the induction, due to artificial environments, they are said to be non-heritable changes. So, generally phenocopy characters are non-heritable. They will not be passed on to their offsprings. They closely resemble the phenotype produced by a known gene. Mean to say, one original organism will be there having the original phenotypic characters. Similar to that of this original organism, another organism also will show the similar images. So, such type of characters we call it as phenocopy characters. It is mimicking the organism's characters which the descent of organisms possess. So a group of organisms will possess the original characters. If other organism mimics these characters in them, we call it as phenocopy. They copy the phenotypic characters. Now, it is dependent on the purely the environmental conditions. Down in the picture, we can find the two organisms of Drosophila. Both the Drosophila, when we look at, towards the left is the wild type and towards the right is the mutant type, yellow body mutant, we call it as. Wild type has grey to brown color body. Students, remember, when these two organisms are exposed, their larvae to the silver salts during the feeding process. When their larvae, both the organisms' larvae feed on the silver salts of the food, both will develop into the yellow body organism. So, the wild type also becomes yellow body flies. Why it is? It is because of the environmental influence. So, when we mimic the characters of the other organisms, due to the environmental influence, we call it as phenocopies. So, just now we have understood the example of Drosophila melanogaster, where the normal wild insect is grey to brown body color it has, whereas the mutant form of Drosophila is there, where it has undergone certain of mutation, so in a gene that leads to the body color of yellow. Now, when the larvae of both the species of Drosophila, when are cultured with the artificial condition providing the food containing the silver salts, their larvae will feed on the silver salts, silver nitrate generally. So, when they start feeding on it, their larvae tend to show the yellow body fly phenotypically. So, the characters of mutant variety will be seen in both the varieties of the organisms. So, this is called as phenocopy. Brown flies will turn to yellow body flies here. But remember, these yellow body flies that are obtained from the brown variety will not remain as yellow body forms in future further in generations, because these characters are not inheritable, as we have understood. So, only in that organism this character change will be seen, not in their progenies. So, this is what we call it as phenocopies. So, the induced phenotype is not inherited, it is not passed on from the parent to the offsprings. So, this is the specialty related to the phenocopies. So, what are all the environmental factors that will influence the organism to possess these new characters to mimic the characters of the other? It is like radiations such as UV radiations, then chemicals, poisons, then temperature shocks, etc. These are all few important factors that will influence the organism to show the phenocopy characters in them. The second classic example related to phenocopy is the Himalayan rabbits. These Himalayan rabbits will develop a coat which is black in color overall on the body if the rabbit is made to live in the cold condition. I repeat, when this Himalayan rabbit lives in cold conditions, that is below 32 to 30, below 33 to 34 degrees centigrades of climatic condition, they tend to develop the complete body fur color of black. So, under cold environment, the color of the coat is black. When the Himalayan rabbit gets exposed to moderately high temperature, the color of the fur tends to change to that of colorless or white. So, at higher temperatures, the color of the fur is white. At lower temperature, the color of the fur is black. So, during the winter season, when we look at this Himalayan rabbit, it shows them mosaicism. The mosaic nature of the color, when we look at the overall body, because of the temperature which is high, about 33 degrees centigrade or so, the color of the fur will remain as the white. Whereas the color of the fur of the ears, tip of the nose, tails, and even of the legs, when we look at, it appears to be black, because those are the regions where the temperature is lower. So when temperature is high, at that part it shows white in color. The rest of the body parts it will show, especially at the tip or extremities of the body, it shows the black in color. It is because of the enzyme which is responsible for the production of the dark color pigment called melanin. So wherever melanin is there, you find the color of that particular part of the body as dark colored. Wherever it is absent, it appears to be whitish in color. So the production of melanin or activity of this enzyme called tyrosinase is under the control of the temperature. At higher temperature, this enzyme becomes inactive, no melanin synthesis, so the fur color appears to be white. At low temperature, the enzyme becomes active and melanin pigment is synthesized, so the color of the body part at that location appears to be dark in color. So this mosaicism in Himalayan rabbit is a character which is under the influence of the environment. The third important example is related to thalidomide babies. In 1960s, people of West Germany and Great Britain, the pregnant mothers started taking in the tranquilizing drugs of thalidomide, nothing but a sedative, during their pregnancy time. This chemical has induced certain of changes within the developing individuals and had led to the formation of deformed babies. So these deformed babies, when we look at, they started showing deformities in their limbs, deformities such as having one limb or two limbs, sometimes three limbs, or at times no limbs at all. The absence of limbs in the human body is a characteristic feature of another disorder or abnormality called as phocomelia. It is due to a mutational change in the gene, a recessive lethal gene. So phocomelia is a condition where the limbs are absent in the new formed individuals. But the individuals who have consumed with this thalidomide in Germany and Britain, the mothers have led to the deformed children. So this deformed children resembled like that of the phocomelian individuals. So it is again an example related to phenocopy. So chemicals or the environmental factors that are inducing the individual to show characters like that of phocomelia. So that's about the importance of phenocopy. The next example is diabetes mellitus. As we all know, it is a heritable human trait which is associated with the hormone insulin secreted by pancreas. The presence of insulin will make the glucose to get absorbed by the cell membranes. When the amount of this insulin quantity is not secreted, glucose will remain in the blood and it will be passed into the urine also. Generally, we have different types of diabetes with different cause condition, but the diabetic individuals, when they start consuming the artificial insulin into their body, when we administrate insulin into the body of a diabetic person, the body system when we look at, the physiological system when we look at, it will resemble like that of a normal human body. So drugs that gets administered into the body of the individual will make the individual to appear to be normal. So these chemicals are inducing the body of the patient diabetic condition to behave like a normal individual. So normal individuals are already there. These diabetic individuals are, due to the chemicals of insulin, are behaving normal. So both are called as phenocopies. Similarly, we have the examples in creeper trait in chickens. It's a condition where even though the limbs are present, the hind limbs, the legs are present, they get drawn back of the body of the organism due to certain of the deformities in them. So they start creeping with the help of their body on the ground. This is due to an abnormality in the genes in case of the fowls. But students remember, remember the creeper chickens behavior can be seen for a normal fowls when their eggs gets incubated along with the boric acid or insulin treatment. So normal eggs, when you treat it with the boric acid or insulin, they tend to behave, the new hatchlings that comes out of the eggs will show the characters like that of the creeper trait. So we are inducing the normal ones to become creeper chickens, okay, which is due to a normal gene, due to a mutant gene, which is a disorder present in the fowls. But here is a condition which we are inducing them to have. So both will resemble same, which are referred as phenocopies. The next example is related to the maize plants. In case of maize plants, due to the deficiency of gibberellic acid, the growth hormone, the plants tend to remain in dwarf condition. But by administering the gibberellic acid into the plant, the hormone, the dwarf plants can grow to the size of the normal plant. So due to the gibberellic acid production, the dwarf plants will achieve the height of a normal plant. Now both the plants are called as the phenocopies. So what's happening here? Basically, in phenocopy condition, genotypically they are different, but they resemble each other with the phenotypic characters due to the influence of the environmental factors. So when environment will influence two genotypically different organisms to have the characters which resembles phenotypically is called phenocopies. So that's about the importance of phenocopy. So the concept of phenocopy is important for 5 marks. The concept of phenotype and genotype, it could be asked for short notes overall. So with this we are completing the concept related to phenotype, genotype and phenocopy. Well students, after we understanding the concept of phenotype, genotype and phenocopy, now we shall understand the MCQs. The first MCQ is, the tendency of an offspring to resemble its parent is known as, when we get born for a parent, we resemble to our parent. What do we call this tendency as? It is called heredity. So answer is B. Who is known as the father of genetics? It is Mendel. So answer is A, Mendel. The alternative form of a gene. When two subunits are there, the alternative forms of the genes are called as alleles or allelomorphs. So answer is D. Which term represents a pair of contrasting characters? So contrasting characters refers to the alternative forms of characters related to a particular trait. So we call it as allelomorphs. Answer is C. The genotype-phenotype distinction was proposed by the scientist. Who is the person who gave the concept of phenotype and genotype? It is B, Wilhelm Johnson. The Genetic makeup of an organism is called as what? It refers to the genotype. Answer is A. The composite of an organism, observable characters. An organism's observable characters or traits refers to phenotype. Answer is B. When two genotypes produce the same phenotype, we have two different genotypes, but they are producing same phenotype due to the different environmental condition. We call it as phenocopy. Answer is C. Well, students, the outcome of today's session is we have understood the terms phenotype, genotype, and phenocopy. The references includes Cell Biology, Molecular Biology, Evolution and Ecology by P.S. Verma and Agarwal, Zoology for degree students by Agarwal, Histology and Genetics by Mohan P. Arora, Cytology, Genetics and Molecular Genetics by B.N. Pandey. I also referred the web references of Wikipedia and Britannica.com. Thank you all students.